The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, Episode 2. Narrated by Wormhole Podcast. Chapter 2. So, halfway between West Egg and New York, the road suddenly connects with the railroad. It runs alongside for a short distance, trying to avoid a sad little place called the Valley of Ashes. This valley looks like a strange farm where ashes grow like wheat. Piles of gray hills, twisted gardens, and even men moving around, all covered in a thin layer of dust. Occasionally, a line of gray cars crawls along an invisible track, making a creepy noise as they stop. Suddenly, ash-covered men swarm up with their shovels, stirring up clouds of dust that hide their work from view. Above this dreary scene, you notice the eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg. They are giant, blue eyes staring from a pair of enormous yellow glasses, seemingly watching over this dumping ground. Some joker must have planted them there, hoping to attract business, but now they just seem to brood over the decay. The valley is bordered by a small, dirty river. When the drawbridge goes up for barges, trains stop there for what seems like forever. It was at this very spot that I first met Tom Buchanan's mistress. Everyone knew Tom had a mistress. People grumbled about how he flaunted her at restaurants, leaving her at the table while he mingled. I was curious to see her, but I wasn't eager to meet her. Then one afternoon, I found myself on a train to New York with Tom. When we reached those gray heaps, Tom jumped up. "We're getting off," he insisted, pulling me along. "I want you to meet my girl." His insistence felt almost violent, as if he thought I had nothing better to do. We walked under Dr. Eckelberg's watchful eyes to a shabby yellow brick building on the edge of the wasteland. It had a couple of shops, one for rent, one an all-night restaurant, and the last, a garage run by George Wilson. Following Tom inside, I immediately noticed how dreary it was. Inside, the only car was a dusty wreck of a Ford, just sitting there in the corner. George, a pale and tired-looking man, greeted us, hope flickering in his light blue eyes. "Hey, Wilson, old man," Tom slapped him on the shoulder. "How's business?" "I can't complain," George replied, though it sounded forced. "When are you going to sell me that car?" he asked. "Next week," Tom said coldly. "I've got my man working on it now." George quickly explained, "I didn't mean that. I just meant—" Tom glanced around the garage, clearly uninterested. Suddenly, footsteps sounded on the stairs, and a woman appeared. She was in her 30s, a bit stout, but there was a certain charm about her. Her dress was a dark blue, and she moved with an energy that was impossible to ignore. She smiled at Tom and walked right past George like he was invisible. "Get some chairs," she said, her voice sultry. George hurried off, disappearing into the office. Tom turned to the woman, looking intense. "I want to see you," he said. "Get on the next train." She agreed, and they planned to meet by the newsstand. While we waited, Tom and I talked. It was just before the 4th of July, and a small Italian child was setting off fireworks nearby. "Terrible place, isn't it?" Tom said, looking at the Valley of Ashes. "Awful," I replied, not wanting to argue. "It does her good to get away," Tom commented, dismissing the place. "Doesn't her husband object?" I asked. "Wilson? He thinks she's visiting her sister in New York. He's too dumb to realize the truth," Tom replied, a smirk on his lips. So, Tom and I headed to New York, though not together. Myrtle sat in a different car, Tom choosing to keep up appearances. She had changed into a fitted brown dress as we exited the train. At the newsstand, she bought a gossip magazine and some perfume. Then she spotted a man with puppies outside. "I want to get one of those dogs," she exclaimed. "They're nice to have." Tom rolled his eyes, commenting that none of the puppies were police dogs. Myrtle seemed undeterred, insisting she wanted one. Eventually, she settled on a wriggling little puppy, which she happily cradled in her lap. "How much is it?" she asked the man. $10, he replied. Tom handed over the cash, joking about buying more dogs. We drove over to Fifth Avenue, where everything felt cozy and warm in the summer sun. "Hold on," I said. "I have to leave you here." "No, you don't," Tom interrupted. "Myrtle'll be hurt if you don't come up to the apartment." "Come on," Myrtle urged. "I want my sister Catherine to meet you." With a sigh, I went along, cutting back through the park. Our cab stopped outside a long line of apartment houses. Myrtle gathered her purchases and headed inside with a flourish. "I'm going to have the McKees come over," she announced, jumping into the elevator. The apartment was tiny, filled with oversized furniture that made it hard to move around. The only decor was a huge photo of a hen that, if you squinted, looked like an old lady. Myrtle was first concerned with the puppy, while Tom produced a bottle of whiskey from a locked cabinet. I was on my second drink by the time the guests arrived, and everything felt slightly hazy. Just as Tom and Myrtle, who had started calling each other by their first names, got back, the doorbell rang. Catherine, Myrtle's sister, entered with a confident air. She was slender, with a bob of red hair and an overly made-up face. Mr. McKee, the man from downstairs, followed her in. He looked a little awkward, with shaving cream still on his cheek. He mentioned he was in the artistic game, which meant he was a photographer. His wife, on the other hand, was loud and demanding, boasting how many times he had photographed her. Myrtle changed into a fancier dress, and her energy shifted. She seemed to swell with confidence. "Most of these fellas will cheat you," Myrtle said loudly, laughing at her own joke. Mrs. McKee complimented her dress, but Myrtle shrugged it off. "It looks wonderful on you," Mrs. McKee insisted, but Myrtle didn't acknowledge it. Tom yawned and demanded more drinks, clearly bored. Myrtle raised her eyebrows, frustrated with the service. "These people, you have to keep after them all the time." She laughed at me, but then turned her attention back to the dog, showering it with affection. Tom bragged about his work on Long Island, but no one was listening. "2 studies," he said, as if that mattered. Catherine leaned closer to me, whispering about how neither Tom nor Myrtle liked their spouses. "If I were them, I'd get a divorce," she said, looking at them. I was surprised to hear Myrtle's violent response when she overheard. "It's his wife keeping them apart. She's a Catholic. No divorce." I was taken aback by the elaborate lie. Catherine continued, saying they planned to run off together once Tom and Myrtle were free. "Wouldn't it be more discreet to go to Europe?" I asked. But Catherine just gushed about her recent trip to Monte Carlo, sharing exaggerated tales of how they'd lost their money gambling. Myrtle chimed in, making jokes about gifts and her desires. As the night rolled on, drinks were in constant demand, and conversations whirled around us. I just wanted to slip away and find some fresh air, but I kept getting pulled back into their chaotic debates. I felt like both an insider and an outsider, captivated yet repulsed by the scene. Myrtle leaned in, sharing her first encounter with Tom. She recalled the excitement of meeting him on the train, the thrill bubbling up inside her. "You can't live forever," she kept saying as she recounted their wild romance. Her laughter filled the room, blending with the noise of the party. As the hours slipped by, I noticed Mr. McKee had fallen asleep, and the little dog sat abandoned on the table, groaning softly. Around midnight, things escalated. Tom and Myrtle argued heatedly, and suddenly she shouted Daisy's name. "Daisy! Daisy! Daisy!" she screamed. Tom snapped, breaking her nose with a swift movement, leaving chaos in the wake of his anger. Blood flowed, and screams filled the air as I stood there, stunned by the violence that erupted in front of me. Mr. McKee awoke and looked around, confused by the turmoil. I hastily grabbed my hat and followed him out, desperate to escape the madness. "Come to lunch someday," he suggested as we exited the elevator. I agreed, thankful to leave that apartment behind. And so I found myself back in the city's cold embrace, waiting for the morning train, my mind swirling with all that had happened. Chapter 3. Sure, here's a simplified, conversational adaptation of Chapter 3 from The Great Gatsby, complete with emotion tags throughout for an engaging listening experience. There was this music coming from my neighbor Gatsby's house through the warm summer nights. Men and girls flitted in and out like moths, surrounded by whispers, champagne, and stars. I'd watch his guests dive from the tower of his raft or sunbathe on the hot sand, while Gatsby's motorboats sliced through the water, creating foamy trails. On weekends, his fancy Rolls-Royce transformed into a taxi, shuttling partygoers to and from the city, while his station wagon buzzed around, picking up anyone arriving by train. Come Monday, 8 servants, including an extra gardener, would work tirelessly to fix the mess left behind. Every Friday, crates of oranges and lemons arrived, and by Monday, they were reduced to a pile of empty halves. There was even a machine in the kitchen that could juice 200 oranges in half an hour, if someone pressed the button enough times. At least once every 2 weeks, a crew of caterers would come with loads of tents and enough colored lights to make Gatsby's garden look like a Christmas tree. They set up buffet tables piled high with fancy hors d'oeuvres, spiced hams, and colorful salads. In the main hall, a bar stocked with all kinds of drinks was ready for the guests, many of whom were too young to remember some of the liquors. By 7 o'clock, the orchestra arrived, not just a small band, but a full pit of musicians with all sorts of instruments. The last swimmers came in, and the drive filled up with cars. The halls and gardens sparkled with vibrant colors, and laughter floated through the air along with casual chatter and introductions that no one could remember. As the night wore on, the music turned lively, and laughter spilled everywhere, becoming richer with every passing minute. Groups formed and dissolved, with new arrivals adding to the excitement. Suddenly, one girl in a shimmering dress grabbed a cocktail, downed it for courage, and leaped onto the platform to dance. There was a momentary hush before the crowd buzzed, thinking she was an understudy from a famous show. The party had truly begun. I think the first time I visited Gatsby's house, I was one of the few who actually got an invitation. Most people just showed up. They hopped in their cars, drove to Long Island, and somehow ended up at Gatsby's door. Once there, they mingled and acted as if they owned the place, sometimes without ever meeting Gatsby himself. I actually had a formal invitation, A chauffeur in a robin's egg blue uniform came over with a note from Gatsby himself, saying it would be an honor if I joined his little party that night. He'd seen me a few times and had meant to introduce himself earlier, but something had held him back. Dressed in my white flannels, I wandered onto his lawn a little after 7. I felt a bit out of place among the swirl of people I didn't know, even spotting a few faces I recognized from my train rides. Young Englishmen were scattered throughout, all well-dressed and seemingly hungry to sell something, bonds or cars maybe. I tried to find Gatsby, but whenever I asked someone, they looked at me like I was crazy and denied knowing where he was. So I slinked off to the cocktail table, hoping to get a drink to ease my embarrassment. Just as I was about to drown my worries in champagne, Jordan Baker emerged from the house and stood at the marble steps, looking down with a mix of contempt and curiosity. "Hello," I called, feeling my voice echo loudly across the garden. "I thought you might be here," she replied distractedly, glancing at me as if I were someone she barely recognized. She shook my hand absently while 2 girls in matching yellow dresses stopped at the steps, greeting us with cheerful hellos, clearly excited about something. "Oh, sorry you didn't win," they chimed in, referring to a golf tournament she had lost. "You've dyed your hair since then," Jordan remarked, but the girls had already moved on. I felt a little jump of surprise, but quickly followed her down the steps. We sauntered through the garden, cocktails floating past us as we settled at a table with the 2 girls in yellow and 3 guys, each one introduced as Mr. Mumble. "Do you come to these parties often?" Jordan asked one of the girls beside her. "The last one was the one I met you at," she answered confidently, glancing at her friend Lucille. "I like to come," Lucille said. "I never care what I do, so I always have a good time." She mentioned tearing her gown at a previous party and how Gatsby had sent her a new one, free of charge. "There's something odd about a guy who does that," said the other girl eagerly. "He doesn't want any trouble with anyone." "Who doesn't?" I piped in, intrigued. "Gatsby. Somebody told me." The 2 girls leaned in, sharing gossip. "Somebody said he killed a man once." A chill went through us all. "I don't think it's so much that," Lucille argued skeptically. "But he was a German spy during the war." One of the guys nodded, seeming to agree. "Oh no," said the first girl. "It couldn't be that, because he was in the American army during the war." She leaned in with excitement. "You can just tell when he thinks no one is watching him. I bet he killed a man." We all turned to look for Gatsby, feeling the weight of the rumors in the air. Dinner was being served now, and Jordan invited me over to join her party on the other side of the garden. There were 3 married couples and a persistent undergrad who seemed to think Jordan would eventually fall for him. After a while, things felt too stiff, and Jordan whispered, "Let's get out. This is way too polite for me." We got up, and she explained we were off to find Gatsby, as I hadn't met him yet. The undergrad gave a cynical nod. We checked the bar first. No Gatsby. We tried the steps. Still no sign of him. Then, on a whim, we opened an important-looking door and found ourselves in a stunning library, filled with real books and a stout man with big glasses sitting on the edge of a table, looking surprisingly drunk. "What do you think?" he blurted out, eyeing us eagerly. "About what?" I asked, confused. He gestured to the books. "They're real, pages and everything." He grabbed one and showed us, clearly proud. "I thought they'd be cardboard or something." As we shook our heads, he rambled on about how he was brought there by a woman named Roosevelt, and how he hoped sitting in the library would sober him up. We left him behind and went back outside. Dancing was happening now, with couples swirling around, but Gatsby was still nowhere to be found. By midnight, the party was in full swing. A famous tenor and a jazz singer entertained the crowd, and everyone was having a blast, trying to outdo each other in laughter and joy. I was still with Jordan. We were sitting at a table with a slightly rowdy girl and a man my age. I was finally relaxing and enjoying the scene. Then the man looked at me and smiled. "Your face looks familiar," he said. "Weren't you in the 3rd Division during the war?" "Yes," I replied. "I was in the 9th Machine Gun Battalion. I was in the 7th Infantry until June 1918. I recognized you." We chatted about our time in France and how he just bought a hydroplane. "Want to join me tomorrow?" he asked. Before I could respond, Jordan interrupted. "Having a good time now?" she asked. "Much better," I said, turning back to my new friend. "This is quite the party. I haven't even met the host. I live right over there." I pointed off into the distance. Gatsby sent his chauffeur with an invitation. He looked at me like he didn't understand. "I'm Gatsby," he said suddenly. "What?" I exclaimed, shocked. "Oh, I'm so sorry." "I thought you knew, old sport. I'm afraid I'm not a very good host." I was struck by Gatsby's smile. It felt warm and reassuring, like he really believed in me. But then he pulled back slightly, revealing a more serious side. He was still just a young man in a fancy suit, trying to impress. Before I could ask him anything else, a butler rushed over, saying Chicago was calling him. He excused himself politely, leaving me with Jordan, still trying to process who Gatsby really was. "Who is he?" I asked Jordan. "Just a man named Gatsby," she replied, though something in her voice suggested she wasn't so sure. "Where's he from? What does he do?" I pressed. "Now you're starting to ask questions," she said with a smile. "He told me once he was an Oxford man." My curiosity was piqued. I thought about all I'd heard about Gatsby. It didn't seem possible that he just appeared out of nowhere and bought a mansion. "Anyway, he throws these huge parties," Jordan continued, changing the subject. "I like big parties. They're so intimate. At small ones, there's no privacy." Just then, the orchestra leader's voice boomed over the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, at Mr. Gatsby's request, we're going to play a piece that caused quite a stir at Carnegie Hall last May." The crowd laughed, all eyes on Gatsby. While the music played, I spotted Gatsby again, standing alone and watching everyone with a smile. His bronze skin looked smooth, and his hair was perfectly styled. I noticed he wasn't drinking, and it seemed to set him apart from the wild fun around him. He grew more formal as the party became more chaotic. Suddenly, Gatsby's butler approached Jordan. "Miss Baker," he said, "Mr. Gatsby would like to speak to you alone." She got up, surprised, and followed him inside. I was alone now, and it was getting late. I could hear muffled sounds coming from a room nearby. I tried to avoid Jordan's persistent admirer, who was deep in conversation with 2 chorus girls. So I slipped inside the room where many guests were gathered. One girl in yellow was playing the piano, while another, clearly tipsy, was singing and crying at the same time. "She had a fight with a man who says he's her husband," a girl next to me explained, raising her eyebrows. I looked around. Most of the women were having tiffs with men they claimed were their husbands. Even Jordan's party was breaking apart, with couples arguing back and forth. The scene was chaotic, and as I waited for my hat in the hall, I saw Gatsby and Jordan come out of the library. He was saying something to her, but then he turned to greet the guests who were leaving. Jordan seemed to be bursting with excitement. "I just heard the most amazing thing," she said, glancing back at me. "But I swore I wouldn't tell it, so here I am teasing you." Before I could respond, She waved goodbye and disappeared into the night. I joined the last of Gatsby's guests, wanting to clear the air. "I was looking for you earlier," I said, feeling a bit embarrassed. "Don't mention it," he said quickly. "Don't even think about it, old sport." He even brushed my shoulder gently. "And don't forget, we're going up in the hydroplane tomorrow morning at 9. But then the butler interrupted again, saying Philadelphia was on the line. "All right, in a minute," he said, turning back to me with a smile. "Good night, old sport." As I walked away, I noticed the night was not quite over. Just 50 feet from the door, a scene unfolded. A new coupe had collided with a ditch, missing a wheel. I recognized the man in the long coat as the same one I'd seen earlier in the library. He looked puzzled, staring at his car as if it were an alien object. "How'd it happen?" I asked. "I don't know anything about cars," he said, shrugging. "It just happened." "Shouldn't you be more careful driving at night?" someone shouted. "Don't ask me, I wasn't even trying," he exclaimed, indignant. The crowd began to murmur in disbelief, and when the door of the car swung open, a pale guy stumbled out, looking dazed. "What's the matter?" he asked, blinking. "Did we run out of gas?" "No, the wheel's off," someone shouted. "It came off?" he said, surprised, before pausing. "Well, let's just back out then." The crowd chuckled. The commotion grew, and I decided it was time to head home. As I crossed Gatsby's lawn, the scene faded behind me, yet the laughter and glow of his garden lingered in the air. I glanced back and saw Gatsby standing on his porch, waving farewell to the last of his guests. And that wraps up Chapter 3. I aim to keep the storytelling clear and engaging while adding plenty of emotion tags for an immersive experience. What do you think?